And I'll just introduce you to these folks. Some of them you may know. And there we go. Oh my word, that had to be first. Let's quickly move on to the next one. Let me see there. Okay, now this lady right here is Miss Jan, and she is a member at Fletcher, and just an absolute delight to be with. This lady is 71 years old. Folks, she did everything that any of us did all week long. And we didn't slow up for her. She was on it. Just absolute joy to be around. You see behind her Perry and Nathan, and we can go to the next slide. And you guys probably know Perry and Nathan. That's a beautiful young lady right there in the front. And then of course Kayla behind her, or Kenzie, or the other. Okay. Okay, you can just to your left there, you just get a picture of Miss Melinda Hopkins, Gilbert, and her daughter Maddie on the other side. That's Brother Mike Howard just steering there. And we can go to the next one. And you might recognize this guy from the back of his head. His name is Zach. And I'm joking. You obviously won't recognize him. But he's a member of Old Fellowship. And I think he does music there. And good folks. He and Melinda and Maddie belong together. And good folks. We really got to know them over the trip, and it was a blessing. Okay? We can go on to the next one. Okay, after about 4 days of traveling, it just seemed that way. But we came into Cincinnati, and there's a picture of of some of the bridges as you come in, and we'll have some more on that toward the end of the presentation. We can go ahead to the next one. Okay, so as you're coming in, you can see that there are several sports stadiums there. There are two big teams that are associated there, the Cincinnati Reds and Cincinnati Bengals. And there was a lot of traffic. We hit right there, couldn't find out Taylor Swift was doing a concert. And yeah, we might have offended her. We didn't even stop and say hi. We just kept right on going. Okay, and go next. Okay, so we were blessed that a church there over near Goshen, it's actually right in the edge of another township, I'm not sure which one, but it was Summit Church, and it's a beautiful facility. They allowed us to stay in their family resources area, and that was an absolute blessing. But that's the outside of the church there. We can go on to the next one. And so we'll show you a few things here. This is inside their foyer in the front area of the church. And so you can see it was a beautiful, beautiful area. There's a few of us. Actually, that was some family members of the staff there. But that's another shot of the lobby area. We can go on to the next one. Okay, this right here, this is kind of unique. On the where it's on the other side of the staircase there's a youth room, okay? So you can go up these stairs right here, and you can't see it, but at the top of that stairs is about a 5-foot diameter hole, and what that actually is a slide. And so it's a curvy slide that goes down into the room on the other side. Pretty cool idea. Kids really seem to like that. But that was a neat area. You can see to the left there's a check-in there for kids when they come, and those folks get them to where they need to be. To the right, you see the door open to the kitchen area right there, and it was almost as nice as our kitchen area, but not quite. Okay, you can go on to the next one. And so there's an upstairs that's directly across from the entrance as you come in. I didn't even go up there, so it's just office space up there. Okay, you can go on. And so this is their sanctuary, right? Okay, so you can see how the stage is when they're having services. They've got the chairs set up, and then that's the front of it up there. But what they do is they take all of that down every week, because they have two groups that come in during the week and meet for Bible studies, and they play basketball while they're there. So that's a picture of it on the right of what it looks like when they take the chairs up and let the basketball goals down. That's a pretty cool idea, okay? This is some shots of artwork that they've done in the children's wing. And so you can see they've done a good job decorating there and creating a pretty neat environment for the children. Okay, we can go to the next one. and just more pictures there from that children's wing. There's the check-in area that we saw to begin with, and then several of the different rooms. And I thought it was pretty neat. Please note, these are not one-way mirrors. Your kids can still see you. So I could just see parents camping out in front of that, looking at their kids, thinking that their kids weren't able to see them when actually they were. So apparently it's a thing.
They have a little theater. So one of the rooms they have, it's like if they want to watch movies with the kids, they go in there and it stays dark and just the big screens are up. And it's really cool because you have like 3 screens. You can have kids playing over here and watching it, and it's just really neat. Very thought out.
I'll take your word for it. I never made it that far. So, all righty. Okay, so we go on to the next one. And so this is Sunday morning. We had some prayer time and a little meeting time before we went to meet with the folks. And we were actually there to minister at Goshen Community Church. Okay, even though we're staying at Summit Church, we were going to minister with Goshen Community Church. So we had a time of prayer and meeting before we went on Sunday morning. So you can see all of our group here. We had a good prayer time before we left to go over there. Okay. And here we are getting off the van at Goshen. And as you can see, everybody made it in one piece. All of our appendages in place. And in the lower right-hand side, you can see the high school there. Okay, so they meet at the Cafe Gymnasium at the high school. Okay, I totally just made that up, but it's both a cafeteria and a gymnasium. It has a stage, and so that's where they have their Sunday morning services, and it works really well for them. Okay, and go on to the next one. So one of the things that we did, we were there to help them all week long, so that started Sunday morning. So every Sunday morning they have to come in and set this up for worship. Okay, so they set some area up with these tables where folks that come in and they have little children, or they're not able to go and sit in the seats for one reason or another, because it is multi-level, right? You go down like 3 levels before you get to the lowest level. So if you're in a wheelchair or you had to walk with a walker, it might not be convenient for you to navigate all that. Although they do have a little ramp there that if you have a stroller, you can take it down, but it's not very wide. So for some folks, it just works out better to be seated up at these tables. And so they do a good job, and we help them get all that set up. You can see Nathan lending a hand there. And he was actually setting up they blocked that side off with a curtain. And so he's putting up the rods, and then they hang the curtains over that. Okay?
And in the middle was Maddie.
Oh yeah, go back down.
That's Maddie.
Oh yeah, that's Maddie right there.
She's cutting with the cutter, which I stayed very close. And I gave her some pointers of things not to do.
Okay. So not a drop of blood or any missing parts of fingers there. So I'm not gonna say anything about all that, but you look there.
Yes.
Yeah. So she did a good job, but that's just Kinsey, corner of her face. You can see there. Okay. All right. So this is Brother Aaron Ellerman. Okay. So he is planning this church. These 3 churches are part of the SEND group or the SEND network, and so that is an operation of the North American Mission Board, and they partner with these folks. They bring them through some intense training and make sure that they are theologically, psychologically, in every way they can prepare them for planting a church. It's just different planting a church than it is going to a church that's already established. And that's what they tell me. I've never planted a church, but who knows. But he's a good brother in the Lord. And one thing that's unique to his situation is that he is from this area. He grew up in Goshen. And that's really unusual. I think you don't see that very often from what I can understand. But he is a good brother in the Lord. So this is him doing announcements and preparing to begin the message. Okay? So these are a couple of shots. The one on the left was at the tail end of the announcements. He introduced Brother Mike, and he was able to share with the folks a little bit of information about us and where we were from, what neck of the woods. And if anybody needed a translator in order to understand us, they just had to raise their hand, and they provide translators. And I did talk to some folks along the way that looked like they probably needed a translator to understand what I was saying. I can't imagine why that was. But you can see a couple of shots of folks in the there as we were worshiping, and I didn't get a firm head count. I think there were probably between 25 and 35 folks there, and that's probably up from about 15 people from this time last year. And so, and I don't know if they had everybody there who's normally there, but we'll learn a little bit more about some of these folks as we go along. But the lady, and you see Paula right here in the middle frame. Okay, so if you look in the row behind her, there's a lady there with a blue top, she's got kind of blonde hair. That's Aaron's mom. And so she's involved in the life of the fellowship. His sister, Miss Rhonda, is as well. I don't think she's pictured in any of these. She was stationed out in the hall. She was welcoming folks as they came in and was doing a fantastic job with it. Just a delightful sister in Christ. And everybody I met there was just absolutely wonderful. You could see the love of Jesus in them, and just a blessing to be around. And the young lady in the frame to the far right, the young lady sitting in the row of brown beige chairs there, is one of their adopted children. And so, can't recall her name. Do you remember what her name was? I want to think Wendy, but I'm not absolutely sure. But she was a delight as well. Okay? We go to the next one. And by the way, if you have a question about something, just raise your hand, and if I see you, I'll call on you. If I don't see you, throw something at me, and we'll try to answer your questions as we go along, if you have any. Okay, so this is after the service, and so this is what they do every Sunday. They come in early, set everything up, and then after the service, everybody fellowships. You know, one thing that I noticed that's true of their fellowship, and it's true with ours as well, is that you can tell that God's working there because folks are not in a hurry to leave. There's only a handful of folks involved in setting it up and taking it down. There's a whole bunch more folks there that just want to be around and fellowship and love on each other before they leave. And so that's a good sign. Okay, so you can see that Perry has made a new friend. And it did not take Miss Paula long to find a dog. And before I knew it, after the service, I'm over there helping put everything up, and where's Miss Paula? She's over there giving some advice to this lady about this dog. So they hit it off really good. Does the canine have a name?
I don't remember the name.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That may be a first. So
I was a little distracted.
So we had a good time fellowshipping with these folks afterwards, and you can see there's a good number of folks that are around just fellowshipping and loving on each other. You see there's other folks that are quickly putting everything up, and it was a good fellowship. He brought a good word out of the book of Judges, and so we had a great time there. I believe, no, that's not Amy. Paula, you remind me when we get a shot of Amy. Okay, in the middle frame, if you look straight across, draw a line across Perry's head, and you see a lady in the red Goshen shirt with the blonde hair, that's Miss Rhonda. And she is an absolute joy. She's the kind of lady that she walks in a room, you can just turn the lights off. She just glows and just loves the Lord. So, and then the last frame, you can see they're still fellowshipping around the table there, and a lot of stuff's already been put up. So everybody enjoys one another. Okay, we go to the next one. Okay, so we were blessed that in the week that we happened to be there, they were having a baptism. And this was the newest members that have come to faith in Christ. And that's Aaron there on the left, bringing us a word before the baptism. And then you can see the couple that was baptized. And so this is the middle one is another shot that got probably a third of the people that were there at the baptism in that shot. And they baptized in a creek. And so here's the funny thing. We were going to the church that morning, and we came across this little creek, and I'm like, I wonder if that's the creek they baptized in. It was just a little trickle of water there. Well, that was the creek that they baptized in. Only this part of the creek looks a lot different than that part that we crossed over. but couldn't find out it was in fact the same creek, as best we could determine. And so it's full of rocks and holes and stuff, so they kind of have to be careful as they navigate out where Aaron was in the park deep enough to baptize somebody without bottoming them out on a rock. But it was a wonderful experience. It was wonderfully and beautifully done. And you can see a couple of our folks there in the middle. I think that's Maddie with her back right there, so in the middle frame. Okay, you can go to the next one. And so then after the baptism, we were there at these folks' home, and it was Jacob and Ashley. We were at their home, and so they had a fellowship supper there during that time, and they had a tent just absolutely decked out with food, and so it was a wonderful time of fellowship. And we probably would have been there till 9 o'clock fellowshipping until it really started raining hard, and so it was time to pack it up and head back. But you can see some of our folks in the right-hand frame there, especially. There's Kayla and Maddie and is that Kinsey? Okay, Kinsey and Maddie and Perry. You sure? Yep. Okay, I think it worked hard. So, and then in the bottom you can see Miss Melinda there on the right. And so it was absolutely wonderful time, and it was just a blessing. And so Paula got a shot of a rainbow as we were heading back, and so for a second I thought that was the building where they had their resource center at, but it's a very similar building to that. Okay, so here's what I want you to imagine: a building that looks almost identical to that one, except the siding's a little different. They have almost the same architecture. And it's across the street from the high school where they meet. Now, folks, this is important. You can go all through the township of Goshen and look and look and look, and you will only find the name of Goshen Baptist Church in 2 places. One of those is on their trailers that they use to haul their inflatables and stuff to do these block parties, and the other one is on the resource center where they minister to their community. So they started this about, I think they first opened it about 9 months ago. It was one of the buildings that was heavily damaged in the tornado last year. Last year on July 6th, the tornado came through, and just, if you saw the damage in Pembroke, you could almost put the picture side by side. It was that bad in Goshen. And so they didn't have power for weeks. They didn't have gas. A lot of the places up there is on city gas. They didn't have either one. And so on the day that the tornado came through, they still had some of their equipment at the high school where they had been doing the block party on the 4th. And they quickly scrambled. They began cooking meals at noon for people. And about 2 o'clock, people that had came through for the meal at noon came and started asking, Amy, what are we going to have for supper? So they began to scramble and get some more food and begin to cook. And they cooked for 2 or 3 days up there and fed hundreds and hundreds of people. And it was just, the Lord just opened an amazing door for ministry in that. God just had them at the right place at the right time to meet this need in the community. And we'll share a little bit more about that later. Well, I don't know that we have any slides of the interview. Okay, so let me mention this. I was telling our folks, this is what it looks like when the Lord opens a door for ministry. So on the day that we were taking down the inflatables, so that would have been the 5th, we're getting close to being done, and this car drives up with a TV station logo and this reporter type, and a cameraman hops out and wanted to know where Aaron was at, and we pointed him to him. So anyhow, she interviewed him for almost 45 minutes, because the reason she did that is because Goshen Community Church was there for that community when that tornado came through, right? And here's the thing that I wanted to mention about the name of it. Everybody there knows about Goshen Community Church, but there's no church building there, and that's by design. Aaron says he has no plans in the immediate future to build a church building. And here's his thinking. He said, everybody wants to build a church for God. He said, but just as soon as you do, it becomes our church building, and the focus turns inward. These folks are as community, as outward, as evangelistically focused as any church you'll find anywhere. They aren't worried about building a building to put their name on it. They're worried about reaching people for Jesus. And they put their faith where their speech is in that. They're not trying to build a church building. They're trying to build the body of Christ. They're seeking God's kingdom in that place. And so the lady arrives to interview him because not only did they feed hundreds and hundreds of people when that tornado came through, the community asked him, because of all that work they did, to serve on a committee to help rebuild Goshen. And he's been involved with that ever since. And so she came and did an interview. And so the Wednesday after we'd taken everything down, we went to his house for supper that night. And so all of a sudden I hear, hey, Dad, you're on TV. And we went in there, and there was no less than 4 different spots that came on where she's interviewing him, and he's talking about what God was doing at Goshen Community Church. Yeah, he talked about rebuilding in the community, and he talked about that. But mostly, he talked about what the Lord God was doing through that church. Folks, that's what can happen when the Lord opens a door. And so it's just amazing. So that's what that building reminds me of. Their building is small. They don't have much storage room, but and what they have in there, they just make available to the community. And they don't charge for it. If somebody wants to give an offering for it, they'll take it, and they use it to restock. But they're doing a good work through that. The Lord's really blessing it. Okay? Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so this is Ashley on the left, Aislinn in the middle, and Jacob on the right. This is the family, and they have another child that's not in this photo. But this is the family that hosted the fellowship, and this is where they do the baptisms at the creek on the backside of their property. Now, I need to take just a second here and talk about this beautiful girl in the middle. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so when Aislinn was born, I can't even tell you all of her medical conditions that she had. But if I'm not mistaken, and I didn't get the full picture on this, and Paula, you correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, they were encouraging Ashley to terminate the pregnancy because they said if she was born, she would never make it. Okay? After she was born, they told her, just enjoy the time that you have with her because you'll only have hours. And then weeks later, they told her, just savor every week you have because you're only going to have weeks. And then it was, well, she'll never live past maybe 4 or 5 months. And you can see she's obviously older than that. She's 2 years old now. And she doesn't, in fact, they were supposed to have an MRI, I guess Monday of this week. And so I haven't heard any information on that. But she has some very serious heavy duty health issues. And, you know, while the doctors are saying she'll never live a normal life, you know, we've heard that before, you know. And so it's in the Lord's hands. So pray for Aislinn and pray for God to continue work because these folks, I can't tell you everything that God has done through this family. And it has just been an absolute miracle. Every day this child is alive is a testimony to the power of God and what he can do when we trust him. So wonderful family. Got to spend a few minutes with them. And she's so precious. She doesn't talk, but she'll open her eyes and she'll look at you. And occasionally she'll smile. And she'll even every now and then kind of chuckle. I never saw her cry, not even once. But just such a blessing. And I'm looking forward to being able to bring some more information about her going forward. Okay, let's see the next slide. Okay, so, you've probably never seen anything like that before. I hadn't either. So, if Ernest P. Worrell had a truck, that's what it would look like. Some of you are saying, who? But we had an opportunity on Sunday evening to go and prayer walk through this trailer park, and we came around the corner, and this is what we saw. So I had to get a few pictures of it. But I don't know. I didn't get to talk to the owner, but apparently it's roadworthy. It's got brand new tires and rims on it. So I don't know. I'll just let you take that in as we talk for a moment about we had an opportunity to split up in groups. There were over 300 homes in this trailer park, and we had an opportunity to prayer walk the entire area and to pass out flyers, tell everybody about the 4th of July celebration that was coming up. We even got to talk to some folks along the way, and probably the most interesting conversation I had was with a young man who had just, in the same week, had graduated high school and had just about cut his finger off. He and Paula had a lot in common, and he had, I think, a 9-month-old daughter, and so had an opportunity to talk with him for about 5 minutes, and before they called him inside, and had an opportunity to share with him why he really needed to have a relationship with Jesus and to have that child growing up in church where she could hear about Jesus. But he lived on the same street as this thing, so I'm still amazed. I just don't have words. Sure.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about the prayer walking time is that we had a lot of young adults. We had, college students with us who had never really done this type of thing, prayer walking and going out. And one of the things we told them was, do not go up to anybody's door, do not knock on their door, do not go in their yard, but if they're outside, you can greet them and you can talk to them and engage them, because we were thinking safety, and we didn't know where we were at. It was really kind of neat to see them engage with people. And Kenzie says specifically that the area she was in, if nobody's out, you're just kind of walking and praying, and you're not really getting to interact with anybody or hand out flyers to anybody. So she said, I was amazed. I just started praying, God, would you please just bring people outside? And she said, all of a sudden there were people just coming out from everywhere. So she was really excited about that, and that was just really neat for her. So I know she shared that with me, so I was going to pass it on to you guys.
Amen. So it was amazing. We met some people that weren't interested. You get about 10 feet away from them, and they say, not interested. Okay, have a good day. And then we find other people that say, hey, we got some information about the block party coming up on the 4th. And we were able to talk with them and share with them sometimes, pray for them. And so it was good. It was a good experience. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so here we are setting up on the 3rd, getting ready for the 4th. We had 2 large tents that we set up. There's Mike Howard swinging a hammer, and it was all hands on deck to set these things up. It needed just about every one of us there to get them up in the air. They were big tents. I don't know exactly the dimensions for them, but they were probably almost as long as from here to or probably were as long as from here to the wall over there, and about half that wide. So they were good sized tents, but they went right up and they came right down. So it's true, what goes up must come down. We had a good time. The Lord gave us, it was hot out, but that first day setting them up, we had some overcast. It even drizzled for a few minutes. And I don't know what it is with Cincinnati area, but there was always a good breeze blowing. And they say it's like that year round. There's always a good breeze. So I take them at their word. And there certainly was that day, and we were grateful for it. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, you see both tents are set up there. So that was before we got any of the inflatables set up. We can go on to the next one. So here we are starting to get the inflatables set up. And so these inflatables are actually owned by the association. And in the Greater Cincinnati Area Association, they have 125 churches. And so these inflatables are loaded on trailers, is really organized the way they have it. I really like the way they did that. And they're available for churches to sign up, to take advantage of and use them. So there was like one row that had about 5 or 6 in one direction. There was one row that had, at that corner you went the other direction, they had 3 or 4. And only one of them, the big slide on the end, you might see some pictures of it in there, was actually owned by Goshen Community Church. The rest of them were owned by the association. So it's actually surprising the way they go up. It's not quite as complicated as you would think, but those things weigh about 300 pounds apiece. So it's some work getting them spread out, and it's even more work getting them packed back up. Okay, we can go on to the next one. Okay, so must have been Monday night, I guess it was. There's a couple in their church family. In fact, they got involved with Goshen Community Church through the event last year, the 4th of July event. But it's Lori and her husband's name, I cannot recall right now. But she owns a little restaurant there. And he used to be a bounty hunter. So, interesting background. I enjoyed speaking with him, and it was just interesting. But she is a marvelous cook. And she has something that I've never seen anywhere else. Crab Rangoon cheese mozzarella sticks. Crab Rangoon mozzarella sticks. I don't care how it sounds, you got to taste it to believe it. It was awesome. And so what she did, she's normally closed on Mondays, but they wanted to feed us. So we all went there after we had went back to Summit and cleaned up, and we came back there for supper, and she fed us that marvelous stuff, fried green tomatoes, stuffed mushrooms, which I didn't eat, but lasagna and green beans and other stuff. So just it was like a casserole dish with carrots and stuff in it. It was all marvelous. And so here's the deal. So it was so good. We had such a good time of fellowship there and got to know them, meet them a little bit. And somewhere along the line, she and Paula got to talking, and she gave Paula a CD. Come to find out, she has recorded, is it more than one CD? This is her first one. So we were in the van and we were talking about, let's put the thing in. And I'm like, man, if she sings half as good as she cooks, it's going to be fantastic. Halfway through the first song, I said, man, if she could cook half as good as she sings, it was just an absolute blessing. And but that was wonderful, folks. You know, isn't it amazing? Anywhere you go in this world, when you meet somebody who is a brother or sister in Christ, it's just like in 10 minutes, you get to know them, and it's just, you have all this commonality in Christ. And so it's just wonderful. But that was such a blessing to be able to spend time with those folks. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So here we are. It's practically time to get started. They had all kinds of, they had games. They had this thing where you put this little helmet on, and it's a basketball goal, and then your opponent puts one on as well, and you're trying to ring, you know, all kinds of stuff like that, in addition to the bouncy houses. They had cornhole boards, had 3 sets of those set up. They had the rope you see, they had a tug of war. And I really wanted to see that, but I was manning a bouncy house at the time, and had to ride herd on that, and that took all my attention. I really didn't get to see it, but it was a great time. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And so here's some of the bouncy houses, and on this first frame here, there's Miss Jan, and she's manning the slide. Now remember, Miss Jan's 91 years old. What'd I say? I don't know where that came from. Anyhow, let's go back 20 years. She's 71. And so it was, of course, as you see sometimes, there's a little child that came along that was kind of scared, you know, and asked Miss Jan if she would go up with her. Guess what? 71 years old. Miss Jan just bounces right up this thing with this child, helps the child come down it, she slides down it, and it was just such a blessing. Then there was a middle one there that's kind of a bouncy house. There's Miss Jan going up the slide. There's the Princess bouncy house on the right. And so it was just, and you can see there's not very many right there. That's the one time we really had to take photos, was right at the very beginning when it wasn't so busy. It quickly got busy and nobody had time for pictures anymore. Okay, let's go on to the next one. They had probably 10 to 12 vendors that were there. They opened it up for vendors to come in. And so they had everything from barbecue to iced coffee and all of that, just about everything else you could imagine. And vendors did a good job. And so it's a very well organized and well run event. And so we were doing all those things, manning the bouncy houses and all that stuff, so that their church members and their church leadership could spend time with the people and minister to them. So also, I don't know if we'll have pictures of it, but they had some vendors in the back that were like homemade goods and things of that nature. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So after dark, they had a fireworks display. And so Goshen Baptist Church does this fireworks display. And folks, I'm telling you, the 4th of July, think that the Mill Creek is good. This was something else. It was just incredible. So everybody, we estimate that the law enforcement comes up with a number for them. So going on to 3 parking lots that were absolutely full with people parking in areas that weren't designated parking. They had a little over 1,000 people last year, had over 2,000 this year. So the Lord really blessed the attendance. Okay, let's go to the next one. Here's some more shots toward the end as we were finishing up the night. And we didn't take everything up, but we had to deflate them and get it ready to take up the next morning. So it was probably going on 10, it was after 10, I guess, about 10:30 before we left the area there where we had the festivities, okay? Everybody was ready to go by then too. We were worn out. Okay, let's go to the next one. Then here's Wednesday where we're taking everything down, and it's just kind of the reverse of putting it up. You know, but it was everybody was there to help with that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so Wednesday evening we did 2 things. We went to Aaron's house, and they treated us to pizza that evening. And so that was a marvelous time. Got to talk with him in depth about some of the ministries of the church and what they're doing, what their plans are, how they're going about it, how the Lord's meeting their needs, and what God's doing in the midst of all that. And so it gives us something to think about as we partner with these folks going forward, and how we can pray for them, and just need to pray that the Lord will continue to bless this resource ministry. It is becoming a real point of connection with the community. And the Lord will continue to bless their evangelistic efforts to reach folks with the gospel, and just bring folks into their fellowship and see them begin to grow and mature in Christ. They do have a few folks that come to their fellowship from other fellowships, but a lot of the folks there are people that they've won to faith in Christ. So there's a great need there for folks to grow in Christ and be able to minister. Okay, so the bottom frames that you see, we're able to go and take a tour of the, I forget what they call the area, but it's the area of Cincinnati that's down by the river. And so you can just, in the background of the frame on the left is the Roebling Bridge. And so I'm not going to take a lot of time to talk about that, but it's an amazing bridge. You can see in the right-hand side, you can see the turrets over on the Kentucky side of the river. Let me ask you a question. Does that look familiar to anybody? You ever seen another bridge anywhere, suspension bridge, that reminds you of? Just think northeast. The Brooklet Bridge. That's exactly right. Well, guess who built that bridge? Mr. Roebling. And this was his first suspension bridge. And listen, the day they opened it, they had about 10,000 people. You can walk across it as well as drive. And then, so the story goes that people weren't sure how well it would work. Nobody had ever seen a suspension bridge before. But then the next day, they had like 100,000 people that went over it. So everybody decided it didn't fall down. They want to go over it. but it's amazing in its construction. And it was delayed by the Civil War and by some other things, economic downturns and all the way. It was owned for a long time by the committee that was in charge of having it built, but somewhere in the last century, the state of Kentucky bought the bridge. They actually own it now, if I'm not mistaken. But what you're seeing is some of the skyline that you can see from the river. There are like 40 Fortune 100 companies have headquarters in Cincinnati, and so that's some of them you might see logos as we go along. Beautiful area down by the river, and that's a shot of everybody there next to the river. We go into the next one, and so that's skyline across the way in Kentucky. Okay, now this next frame coming up here, what does that remind you of? A pig. A pig with what? With wings. That's right. So if you saw the little blurb on the Facebook page that Miss Sue put up there for us, it said, what does Flo from Mel's Diner in the city of Cincinnati have in common? Well, the answer is flying pigs. Remember, Flo would always say, when pigs fly, you know. Well, Cincinnati had such a thriving pork trade. That's really what put it on the map in the early days. There was a bunch of German farmers that began to raise pigs, and they were very good at it. And so before long, the city of Cincinnati, being in a rail hub, was sending pork all over the U.S. And in fact, for a while, it was known as Pigtown. So, but I guess nobody will stick with Pigtown. It's known as the Queen City now or something.
And that was out in one of the parks, and you can see like there's these ropes right in front of it, like a little ladder rope, and the kids can climb up the ladder rope, get inside the pig, and then on the wings there's ropes that you grab and you pull it, and the wings go up and down, and the pig goes up and down like they're on a ride. It's really kind of cool.
It was pretty cool, I have to admit. And it's the kind of thing that you look at that and you think, well, I never thought about that. But it was cool. And so that was very nice. Okay, let's go on. And we'll just, so here's where we're starting out on the, yep, that's the bridge. But I think that is from that's after we've already crossed over. And that's from the Kentucky side as we're prepared to go back through. And you can see the Cincinnati skyline there behind you, okay? And so they have a dock there with 3 different ferry boats that operate up and down. And you can see one of the stadiums there in the middle frame, some of the other corporate headquarters and whatnot, office buildings in the right-hand frame. Okay, let's go to the next one. So Ed Wimmer was the kind of helped found that whole committee that got the bridge going. So that's just they have a plaque. They actually have like 5 plaques in that area, but that was the one that was really pertinent. But he was instrumental in getting the bridge built. Okay, that's cool. So more of the skyline as you go back. The turret on the Ohio side of the river flies of course, the U.S. flag and the state flag over there, and Kentucky does the same thing. On their side, their turret, 2 turrets, one on each side of the river, and some other of the skyline that you see there. And in the right-hand frame, there is paid parking down on the river. So if all the other parking places are full and you want to park down on the river, you can, just like any other paid parking, you can go down there. They probably get 50 or 60 vehicles in there, okay? Which is kind of unique, I thought. There's no one of the sports stadiums there. And so, picture of us as we're coming back across to the Cincinnati side. There's the view from one of the turrets, the arches going up. And there's one in the lower right-hand side. There's one of the riverboats coming back. And so it was very beautiful there. And everybody enjoyed our little tour of the bridge and seeing everything in that. Okay? Let's go on to the next one. There's view of the railroad on an adjacent bridge. That's on the way home. So they have like 3 bridges in close proximity there. And one of them, I think, is just for rail traffic. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, how many of you ever heard of Buc-ee's? I was a newbie. I didn't even know there was such a thing as Buc-ee's. I had never heard of Buc-ee's before in my life. I hope we get one. I think there's one coming to Brunswick. I made a joke about there must be 100 gas pumps out there. The one they're building in Brunswick will have 125 gas pumps, if I'm not mistaken. It is incredible. And I'm not even going to try to describe it. It's just, you got to see it to believe it. Yep. Okay? So we stopped there to fuel up at the gas pump and to go inside, and we got things like incredible beef jerky and some other stuff along the way. It was everything I heard it was. So pretty cool. I don't know how in the world I went all my life not hearing about Buc-ee's, but anyhow, I've led a sheltered life apparently. Okay, let's go on to the next one.
I had it to my sister too.
Okay, so this is on the way home. We're back at Eastern Heights. They were good enough to let us park in their parking lot while we came home with everybody that we left with. That's always a good thing. And we were all even still speaking to each other. So that's even better. So it was good. The Lord blessed us, and we appreciate our church family making it possible for us to go. And we appreciate everything that folks did along the way. And it's just special when you go and you serve the Lord. And it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. But it is blessed indeed. I think that's the last one. Is that the last one? Okay. So Paula wants to share something real quick.
One other, this is just an interesting tidbit. In that area, they had this place called Skyline Chili. Isn't that what it was?
Yep.
And it was, everybody there said, if you haven't had Skyline Chili, you have got to go there. They make the best chili. Well, they do not make South Georgia chili. This was totally different. They eat it on spaghetti noodles, which is weird. Okay, but it doesn't really taste like our chili. You can't think chili and eat this stuff. Okay, it's just different. But we finally did go there and eat it, and it was an interesting experience.
Well, they used to term chili loosely, you know, and but they're convinced it's the best chili in the world. Listen, it was an Italian family that came, either Italian or Greek one, that came over, and this was a recipe that his mother used to cook, and he realized it was similar to American chili. So in their mind, it was chili, and that's why they put it on spaghetti noodles and all kinds of pasta. And so I know it's hard to wrap your mind around, but if you didn't call it chili, it's pretty good. But if you were expecting chili, it was. But I'll tell you something else to look out for. I saw on the menu that they had cheese fries, and so I just got a bowl of chili. But after a few mouthfuls, I thought, you know what, this might be okay on cheese fries. So I said, hey, can I just get a small thing of cheese fries on the side? Sure, it'll be right out. She brought this thing out. There was some fries down on the bottom of it, but listen, you can ask her, I'm not exaggerating. There was no less than 3 to 4 full measuring cups of shredded cheese on top of the fries. It was piled up like that high. It was that big around. But it wasn't melted. It's just on there. That's the way they serve it. So if you get cheese fries at Skyline Chili, it's going to be some fries with shredded cheese, not melted, on top of it. The only thing that melts is a little bit of cheese that's laying right on the fries. But it was interesting. And so Paula said we should go back and make some chili and show them what chili is supposed to taste like. So I don't know. Some things are just better left unsaid. But anyhow, that's the Skyline Chili. I sent somebody back home a picture of Paula walking across the greenway there where we had the thing. And I said, guess where we're at? They said, Mill Creek. And I said, no, Cincinnati. And they texted me back and said, I hear they have good chili there. So, word gets around, but you have to manage your expectations, okay? All right. Well, thank you for bearing with us as we worked our way through that. I want to, listen, here's one thing. Never underestimate the women in our family. And Paula's never done PowerPoint before, but she put this thing together in one evening. And so she did a wonderful job with that. And I am most grateful that she was able to do that. Okay. So we'll bring you news from Goshen and the township of Anderson. The church in Anderson will be Bridge City Church. That's the name of their church. And up in Middletown, it will be, if they, not sure yet if that's going to be straight up a church plant, or if that church, they're talking with a church whose pastor has retired, and it's a dwindling population in the church, Calvary Baptist Church. But they are situated right across the road from an apartment complex that has over 3,000 apartments in it. But this is what the pastor told me. He said, you'd think you'd just be able to reach people there all the time. But he said, we have 3 months to reach people in this apartment complex. Because here's the deal. They move in, it's low income. They pay for 3 months. And then the complex has, another few months to get them out, when they don't pay. And he said a large percentage of them, that's what happens. And so they are, Jared, who is the pastor in Middletown, is talking with this church to see about maybe doing a replant with them. And exactly what Southbridge did with the church that was on the back, Gracewood. It used to be Gracewood, now Southbridge. That was a replant, And so it's a similar situation. But but pray for them. It's a difficult situation for them. And, to have your pastor retire and to maybe have a pastor come in and bring a team of folks with him, that will be a whole different church. It will no longer be Calvary Baptist Church. So they're praying through that. They were supposed to vote in May, and they pushed it back to June, and they pushed it back again. And I don't know when they're actually going to vote on that. But he has plans if the Lord doesn't open that door, they will just straight up do a church plant in Middletown. And Middletown is very different. Goshen, you're in and around Goshen, it's just like Bullitt County. It's rural. It's about 40, 45 minutes outside of downtown Cincinnati. So it's very rural like we are. You're going backside the high school, it's a cotton field, Anderson is real upscale. It's like the country club out at Forest Heights. It's the kind of place where people grow up and they go out, they go somewhere, they get a good education, they get established, and they move back to Anderson to raise their family. It's excellent schools and cities and the whole shooting match. And then Middletown is very much like an inner city type situation. It's more of a metropolis area, but it's like the inner city. And so it's 3 very distinct and different areas. So we'll be bringing information for you from these 3 church plants as we go along. Okay. So does anybody need a prayer sheet? Anybody that did? I already passed some out. So yeah.
Does it say 7:5 or 7:12 on your sheet?
Last week.